Hi, hello, welcome back to the Bibles and Barbells podcast, and today we have Brooks Falmer and Mark Goldman.
And this sounds like NPR radio.
Yeah, that's true. I'm not super hyped today.
I think Brooks is tired.
I am not, Mark. I'm hyped. This is a podcast. I'm supposed
He's
to
a little frustrated because he lost his wallet and
we had technical difficulties.
And we had a lot of technical difficulties. But we're good now. So, all right. So, we usually talk about discipline. We have been talking about that. But, Brooks, you wanted to talk about manhood and fatherhood. So, tell me why.
Tell me why I want to talk about it?
Yeah.
Because I believe that, I shouldn't say I believe, there's a bunch of people out there that don't have a father.
Right.
Okay? And a lot of the times, they seem a little bit different than someone who has a father figure in their life. And that's normally negative.
So you're talking about a lot of guys who don't have fathers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think they're so important in life that we need to learn how to be a proper father figure for later.
Right.
And not just leave like some dads do.
Okay.
Almost most dads do at this point. It shouldn't be like 50% of people have a dad, 50% of people do not.
Right. It's just people in your life.
Basically.
Yeah.
Oh, there's I bet you if you go to a public school setting, half of them either have a father figure and they're like a terrible father, semi-abusive, or they're just not around.
Right.
Or they just don't have one at all, and mentally it gets to them entirely.
Yeah, I've noticed it too. So the statistics are 1/3 of kids have no father, and 50% of children are born outside of marriage.
I would have probably guessed both of those, but I thought I was getting closer to 50%.
Well, if 1/3 have no father, then the remaining 2/3 you have to put in that category. They have a father in their life, but whether or not that father is involved.
I guess that is also true. So let's say a quarter that doesn't have a father.
Right.
And then another quarter is their father just kind of sucks.
Maybe.
Is semi-abusive or something.
Right.
So how do you become a good father / dad? And even if you don't have one, how do you become a man?
Okay. Those are good questions. Do guys ask you this? Do guys want to talk to you about this?
All the time.
All the time.
All the time. I guarantee people want to talk to you about this too. Like, it's such a common recurrence that like men have to have a father,
right?
Or they have no idea what they're doing, and they fall into a line of bad decisions.
Right. I agree. I talk to kids all the time, and the ones who don't have dads, you can figure it out real quick.
Yeah, it's pretty rough.
So yeah, 85% of prisoners grew up in fatherless homes. Do you know that?
Wow. Are you serious?
85% of prisoners grew up in fatherless homes. Kids who, I think it's like 90% of homeless people grew up in fatherless homes. If you don't have a dad, you are 300% more likely to deal drugs and carry weapons.
That's a little bit scary right there.
Yeah. Well, so we're just, the recent news is about shootings. Yeah. So almost all of those cases, you know, if there was a dad involved, you know, I realize that sometimes you have a kid who has mental illness, and that doesn't necessarily have to do with that, but for a large part, it's a fatherhood problem going on.
Truly.
And because of that, you got a bunch of young guys who they have no examples, they have no father figures, they have no discipline, they have no guidance, and so they're just running loose in the culture, just tearing things down and tearing things up, and hurting a lot of people along the way.
So how do you become a good father?
All right. Well, so the first thing you have to do is learn how to be a good man. So I guess we could start talking about that, and we'll just chase this rabbit.
Let's deal with it. Let's burn it
as far as we can go today, and then we'll just pick it up next week.
Let's do it. This is awesome. All right, we've made a little bit of a turnaround in our podcast, and this is going to be really influential.
So, okay, first thing, one of the silver linings of our culture having completely burned down the whole institution of fatherhood is that you get to start from scratch if you're going to rebuild it.
Okay.
Right? So there's really no mold. I mean, it's like the house burnt down. You're going to rebuild the house. Now you can put the doors where you want them, lay out the way you want it to. So that's the one nice thing. So we can kind of look at it from scratch. If nobody has any good example of what to look at, then we can start from scratch. But the question you have to begin is, what is the purpose of men? So why did God make you a man and not make you more like a woman? What's the virtue of being a man?
So do I need to answer this in a...
Just answer it the best.
We're supposed to be leaders.
Okay.
And strong-willed.
All right.
And disciplined.
Okay.
If we're not those things, then women will look up to us as feeble and not able to do anything.
Well, what differentiates you between... What makes you different than a woman? Besides the body parts.
Gender roles.
Okay. Well,
I think we have a different mindset.
Okay.
Like, I think women have lots of things on their minds. When, like, if someone says one thing, they have 100 different options of how they can respond or what they think about it. For men, normally, like, when we're like, you suck, we mean you suck. We're not just like, we're not messing with you. We're being honest.
Sometimes we do mean that. Sometimes you can go to a guy and be like, you suck. And you don't actually mean that they suck. You may give them an insult, and it's almost a way of affection, right? So you interact differently.
Yes. So, like, like when we're around each other, I've noticed this. When we're around each other, we can berate each other and be, like, horrible to each other. But then when we, like, separate, we're like, that's a good guy. Yeah. He's all right.
Yeah. I go home and cry a little, but...
Whatever. I know there are probably some dudes that do, but,
So used to, the differentiation was pretty easy because we lived in a world that required that differentiation. So used to be that jobs were more physical and raising kids were a lot more hands-on work. And so the distinction was just obvious. It was necessary. You're not going to send a woman down into a coal mine to shovel coal all day or swing a pickaxe. When you had those jobs that required back-breaking labor, a man's body was the obvious thing. You can't just say, well, it's just because of tradition or the culture created those gender roles. The need created those gender roles in some ways. A man, no matter what crazy thought comes through people's head, a man cannot give birth. That's one thing a man cannot do. Women are, not only can they give birth, but they can raise children, especially young children. So it made sense. If you were a young family back in the 19-teens, let's say, in this area, you're not going to send your wife into the coal mine to work, and she's not going to leave you at home to raise the kids. It just didn't work that way. Necessity created those roles. But now, a man's strength is not as important because the work that we do doesn't require that physical strong back that it used to. So even in a lot of the manual labor jobs, it's not like you're strapping heavy weight to your shoulders and packing it around. There may be a little bit of that, but now your natural aggressiveness is almost a liability instead of an asset. And so that, combined with the rise of feminism, has effectively left a lot of guys have no clear understanding of why they are men.
So, are you talking about modern day feminism or past?
Well, there's been different waves of feminism that have come through. So, I mean, we're on the receiving end of almost 100 years now of feminism.
Okay. Well, the reason I asked this is because there used to be the older kind where they just wanted to have the same opportunities as we do. That's fine. But modern day has become to the point where they just want us to be females at this rate.
Right. Yeah. I have told you before that you are not a defective female.
It seems today like it's almost a reverse effect. Like, okay, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with women working, but it's like today, if you say you want to be a stay-at-home mom, you're negatively looked upon. But if you want to be a stay-at-home dad, the first thing you'll hear is like, oh, there's nothing wrong with that. That's okay, buddy.
Mm-hmm.
Like a pat on the back.
Yeah, that's a feminization. So
We can't raise a child. We would suck at it. We just can't. We can only... Well, I would say, like, a mother is supposed to be, like, gentle and kind. And we are like, all right, you're going to go bang nails and this is how it's going to work. And I don't care if your arm gets sore. We're going to do it. This is just the way it is.
Well, you know, the difference is oftentimes just blurred to the point now where the only difference is a mindset, that you either think that you're a male or think that you're female. But as far as the roles go, they have just become completely blurred. And in fact, a lot of guys, especially, I mean, when I was going through school, I felt this way, that in some ways you were just a defective female. In other words, what I mean by that is if you could be more like a female, you would do better in school and in life. So there's always this kind of like notion when you're going through school, if you could just sit still like the girls do and focus like the girls do and not be rowdy like the girls, you would be a better student. Now think about the good students in your school.
They're females.
Of the boys. What do?
They sit still.
They sit still. They focus. They don't get rowdy.
We can't
They're
do
not
that.
Smart Alex.
Goody two shoes.
Goody two shoes.
Yeah.
Well,
And there is a degree in which you kind of have to have that, but that natural aggressiveness is oftentimes just put down. You know, this is not a good thing. This is a liability. Those are the things that God gave you naturally, but all things that you almost have to suppress.
do you think that in school, it is on average females are smarter than men?
No, there's no difference. The averages average out so that men and women have the same amount of intelligence on average, but the environment, I think, of school makes it to where guys figure out that a lot of their natural instincts are not appreciated, and so they just check out. Girls massively outnumber guys in college at this point. They're starting to outnumber guys in the workforce. They're starting to outnumber them in all kinds of different areas, and a lot of it is because guys get frustrated and just clock out. Say, forget it, I'm done. I'm trying with this, I'm not appreciated with it, and so they just screw it. So it creates a cycle, because when you have that, guys check out, they may become fathers, and then they perpetuate the problem. Those kids grow up and they perpetuate the problem. So you have very few examples. And what I have seen is, like you were saying, a lot of guys would like to talk to me about this, is most of these young guys crave mentoring.
Oh my gosh, yes. Like, it's unbelievable. If we could start some sort of mentor group, that would be awesome.
Right.
Because I know for a fact there would be hundreds of people that would show up to it. No doubt. There's so many people that want to, just want to have a father figure and teach them how to become wealthy or anything like that. It's unbelievable. They just want something to strive for, and they don't have anybody pushing them.
Right. A young man is like a rocket without a guidance system. He's got all of this energy. He's got all of this potential, really, but he has no guide, and so he's just he either blows up, one, or he just gives up. And so I'll push back on you guys a little bit. A lot of guys are being robbed by junk food, video games, and porn.
Pretty much.
It's like emasculating you. All of those things add to a lower testosterone,
I would imagine.
erectile dysfunction.
I believe you. It's just when you say it, it's kind of funny.
Yeah, it's true. And lower energy levels, hopelessness, meaninglessness.
Sounds like just depression all around.
A lot of guys are depressed. They need sunlight, exercise, and friends who push them. And a mentor, probably.
It probably? What do you mean, probably? That's indefinite.
All right, so listen to this. this is Paul talking in 1 Corinthians. So, letter to 1 Corinthians, he's all over the place because this church has got major problems. It's totally screwed up. And he's dealing with sexual issues, he's dealing with division issues, he's dealing with women acting like men, he's dealing with all kind of abuse of spiritual gifts, and he's correcting them on all of these things. The whole letter is just a hodgepodge of just like, you guys are just messing it up one way. And then, so at the very end of the letter, he starts telling them, like, now you need to go and, like, put these things into practice, right? Now, if you're going to practice this, if you're going to correct people on sexual issues, and you're going to correct people on the use of their spiritual gifts, and you've got to tell some women that they can't be doing the things that they're doing, you're going to have some guts. We'll put it that way. All right, so he says this: be watchful, stand firm in the faith, act like men, be strong. Now that's a really interesting thing, because he uses the phrase act like men, and he gives no qualifier by what he means by that.
It should be just known.
Because it was known. They understood what that meant. But today, if you tell people act like men, you're going to get a lot of different answers. So,
You want me to just throw out 50 answers or what?
yeah, just throw out a bunch of answers.
To act like a guy?
Act like men.
I think it involves strength, mental discipline amongst insanity. So everybody around you is going to drive you probably insane if you even think about acting less feminine.
Right.
And then you're going to get a lot of backlash.
So I think what Paul's talking about when he's like saying act like men, he's talking about like what nature tells you. So like in another verse he says, doesn't nature tell you that it's a shame for a man to have long hair?
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's sort of the same thing here, but he's talking about men entirely. So like could be anything like masculinity, strength, fitness, whatever things are usually associated with men.
Right.
Act like that.
Yes, you're right. The virtues of manhood. This is what I'm trying to point out. If you're going to be a good father, the first thing you need to see is that there is a virtue to being a man. In other words, it's good that you're a man. And that has to be said because so many young guys have it in their head that it's a problem that they're a man. That being a man is a problem that they have to overcome. And there is challenges to being a man, but it's not a bad thing that you're a man. It is a good thing that you're a man. The qualities and characteristics that you have that are common among guys, those are not inherently evil things. Those are good things. They need to be channeled in the right direction. So Genesis 1 talks about how God created man and why God created man. You need to have a noble view of who you are. So in Genesis 1, you remember this is the creation story. So everything in creation, you want you to notice, is God just dividing things. So what's he dividing? He's dividing the night from the day. He's dividing the light from the darkness, the sea from the land. He's dividing
animal species of all kinds.
Animal species, tree species according to their kinds, everything. And then he makes man, right? And he divides the man. So
with the female.
With the female. So in chapter 2, he's dividing. So everything God does in creation is he's making clear distinctions between this and this. This is, black and white, good and bad. Everything is very clear. When the serpent comes in, he begins to muddy the waters, makes everything ambiguous. Like, I don't know where the distinction lies anymore. All right? You see that today. Every time you see those lines being blurred, that's satanic. That's demonic. A lot of this stuff today with gender roles and blurring the gender roles, this doesn't come from God. All right?
Well, I would imagine. Right?
This is not a good thing. And this blurring of the gender roles, not only is it bad for women, which we'll talk about that probably in a different episode, because it's like taking a phone and trying to use it as a hammer. It's not designed to be used in that sense. And so when you take things and you misuse them, it hurts them. And so it's hurting women, but it's particularly hurting a lot of these young guys, especially as they grow and they become fathers. So in Genesis 1 and verse 26, it talks about why God created man. He makes it very clear because he actually says why he makes man. Verse 26, then God said, let us make man in our image after our likeness, and let them have dominion. And he talks about all the things that he's going to have dominion over. And then in verse 28, he says, and God blessed them, and God said to them, be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth and subdue it, and have dominion over the fish of the seas and all of the other things. So there's 4 things that are mentioned there that why you were made a man. Number 1, you were made to rule. That is to take dominion.
Well, all right, let me counter this. So you said to rule, okay?
Mm-hmm.
People can consider that as abusive. So what do you mean by rule? Let's be more specific with this.
Yeah. So just because it can be abused doesn't mean that it's not a good thing. Rule or dominion, so dominion comes from the same word that we get domain or domestic. It means to make something your house. So if it's what you've been put in charge of. So it's basically take responsibility for these things. You're in charge of these things. And that's what I think Paul means when he says, act like men. He's like, look, here's all the things you're doing wrong, and you need to fix them, all right? So act like a man, meaning you need to take responsibility for these things.
Because you're the leader.
Because somebody's got to do it, man. And
there you go.
Why you've been created. So the thing is that it's like, I thought about this preparing for this when it comes to rule. It's the first thing everybody thinks. Well, that you could use that to be a tyrant. Well, here's the difference. You can see yourself as being worthy of ruling, like you deserve to rule, or you can see yourself as being called to rule. That's God's calling on your life. You are called to take dominion and be responsible for your life. Not because you deserve it, but because that's what God created you to do. So I wish there was just a lot of guys, a lot of your friends who, when they think about their life, they need to see themselves as being kings under the king. Look at yourself. Your life is a noble thing. Does that make sense? Yes.
So basically, from that, kind of do what Jesus would do.
Yeah, the thing is, Jesus always said, look, I'm just doing what I see my Father doing. I'm doing what he tells me to do.
Lead nobly, and do not raise a fist whatsoever, but speak with leadership. So, there's a fine line you have to walk, I would imagine, right? Between abuse and leadership. And if you can walk that line correctly, then you're doing your job.
I guess you could say it's a fine line. It's not that complicated. You are a king under the king. So do what the king tells you to do. You're a steward king. So you don't get to keep the throne. You're just there for a little bit. But your job is to take care of things while the king is away, or whatever he's entrusted to you. So you guys are young, the first thing you should be king over is yourself. Like, you don't have a whole lot of responsibilities right now, but there's a few things that you do. So be responsible for those things, like your body, your time,
your room.
Yeah. Yeah, Jordan Peterson has this whole thing where he talks about treat yourself like one you are responsible for taking care of. Meaning a lot of times people will take better care of their pets than they will take care of themselves.
Oh, that's ridiculous, and it is true.
Yeah.
I will not lie, it is kind of unbelievable.
He also has a thing where he says, hold your head up with your shoulders back. And that's the way a lot of these guys should think about themselves. Quit thinking of yourself as being like defective. Because there's just so many guys who, if they don't have a dad who's going to hold themselves, who's like going to prop them up and be like, good job, buddy, they just start to droop. And as they become demoralized, they get angry and bitter. And they begin taking that out on people. And so it's like, quit thinking of yourself like that. Begin to think, look, you've been called to take dominion. You're a king under the king. Hold yourself up like one, man.
No, you have to be strong enough to not need like a good job. You just have to know you're doing a good job.
That would be a good start.
So if you had to list 5 things to do to just master being the best man you could be, what would they be?
I don't know, but I think it begins with just the.
If they don't know what foot to take, then they're not going to take one. So you have to give a very, because people are stupid, you have to give a very specific way for them to become more manly, and you have to
right.
What's the first step?
The first step, I think, is you've got to see the nobility and the purpose of your manhood. It is good to be a man, and you need to hold your head up and see yourself as who you really are. You have been made to take dominion, so take dominion. That's the first thing. Take responsibility. Take responsibility for yourself and clean yourself up a little bit. If you're going to be responsible for anybody else, you've got to take responsibility for yourself first. So what's underneath your control? What do you have the ability to control right now? You don't own a home. You may not have a job yet. Or you don't have a family. You don't have a spouse. In fact, you don't need any of those things. Until you can prove that you can take care of the little that you've been given right now, I wouldn't, a lot of these guys, it's I don't think that they're bad guys, but if they can't take care of their body, they can't clean their rooms, they can't take care of anything
whatsoever
responsibly, I'm not giving my daughter in marriage to them.
I mean, that would make complete sense.
Right.
If they have if everything in their life is messy, that means they're messy.
Right.
So, let me ask you this. What's your take on being a stepfather or a stepmom, and why is it that when kids get a stepfather, they just despise them and try everything in their power to I don't know, hate on them?
I don't know. Divorce has been one of the worst things that has happened. It's the worst thing that happens to kids. You talk to kids whose parents are divorced, and it eats at them all of the time. So stepdads or stepmoms, it's almost impossible. You're playing from behind from the beginning, and so I feel for them.
It's like if you're gambling and you have to hop in with the hand that you've been given, and you have to play that hand the best you can.
Well, look, the thing is that if you take care of yourself and you show yourself to be responsible, people will be happy to give you responsibility. If you're going to be a good man, there's just a lesson. There's a couple things you need to realize. Number one, if you're going to be a good man, you're going to spend a lot of time in your life making up for the failures of other bad men, because other guys won't pull their weight and do their job. You're going to help raise their kids. You're going to take care of their wives. Okay, you're going to have to pay their taxes, and it's just those guys are always going to be a continual frustration to you, because their life is a mess. You have to make up for their problems. And so in that sense, you oftentimes become like a stepdad to
your friends,
to the people around you. I'm 40 years old, so I mentored a young man whose dad died. He didn't have a bad dad. His dad just died. But he was so desperate to have a father figure that he just kind of
went to you.
In that sense, I was like a stepdad. But you just take what if you can help, you help. And but that's the main thing, though, is starting off is you see the goodness of what you have been called to be and do, and you take responsibility for it.
I guess that's the best way you can probably put that then.
Well, it's in all of these things, there's 4 things. You're called to rule, you're called to multiply, you're called to subdue, and you're called to glorify. Those are the 4 things that you were made for. And it's just, there's a nobility to being a man. You are a man not because you have a male body. I mean, you do have a male body.
But
You're male to your very essence. You're male to your very soul. You have a masculine soul. You have a masculine spirit. You have a masculine mind. You have a masculine personality. In other words, the difference between men and women is not just skin deep. It goes down to your very soul.
that's pretty wild.
And that's a good thing.
So
number 2 is you need to quit caring what everybody else thinks about it.
all right. So when you're going, so what'll happen majority of the time when you want to become a good man is everyone around you either is going to love you or hate you.
There are going to be people who don't like you because of the direction that you're pushing towards manhood and womanhood. If you're going to make a clear line, this is what manhood looks like, and this is what manhood should look like, you're also making a clear distinction that womanhood doesn't look like this.
And they won't like that.
And they're not going to like that. Which is why when I spoke about manhood, the women got mad.
That's pretty much with anything. If you stand up for pretty much anything right that the world looks at as, if you stand up against something that's bad but the world sees it as good, they're going to lose their mind if you say it's bad.
Do you think if you have a group of men that are like strong men and cannot be defeated, do you think that is like the greatest group of all time?
Oh yeah, there's nothing like being in a group of guys who are
disciplined,
constantly pushing you to become a better than what you are.
Feels great.
It is a catalyst to a major life change, that's for sure.
Well, there you go. All right, well, we're going to take a break and hear from our sponsors.
Just because you're a man doesn't mean you couldn't use a tan. No one wants to see you with your shirt off at the pool with that pasty white skin. Go see our friends at SI Tan, located in Carbondale, Marion, and Heron. They'll have you looking good enough that people won't look at you and say, "That's nasty." SI Tan.